Hello there friends, my name is xyeLz, and today we're going to be playing Rust. We're going to take a look at the Star Fort. I concocted this base in my lab because I needed a base that was impenetrable. Now, if you've played Rust before, you know very well that no base design is impenetrable. Anything can come down with enough explosives or rockets. My goal here was to create a base design that even if an enemy knew exactly where the loot was stored, it would take them so long and so many resources to get into the base that it wouldn't even be worth their while. Keep in mind that this base design was built on the DeadLaugh Server, which is a lightly modded server. The base itself will cost you over 400,000 stone, 100,000 wood, and has over 200 doors, which is going to cost you between 40,000 sheet metal or 2,000 high quality metal depending on which material you choose to use.
Now, I know you're probably wondering what kind of moron puts 200 doors in their base, but there's a good reason for all the doors, and you don't necessarily have to use 200 doors if you don't see fit. Really, it's just to make the base a little bit more secure. Now, anytime I build a base in Rust, there are three main aspects that I take into consideration. Some of these are pretty obvious, and I have a feeling that most of you guys, whether you know it or not, also build your base using at least one or two of these aspects.
The first one of these is security. How strong is your base? Can it withstand an attack? The second one of these is defendability. How easy is it to defend your base?
How many windows do you have, and do they provide good vision?
And the third one of these I feel is overlooked by most Rust architects out there, and that's maneuverability. How easy is it to move around your base?
Most builders will construct their base as securely as possible, but won't actually consider how long it takes them to get in and out of their base. This might not sound like a big deal, but when you're in a rush to find your weapons or your gear, it can become pretty frustrating. Now, we're going to begin the tour shortly, and when we do, I'm going to make sure to mention how I integrated security, defendability, and maneuverability into the base design.
Now, before we dive right into taking a tour of the base, I'd like to give you guys a bird's eye view of the base because it's very important for you to understand why it's designed the way that it is. You'll first notice that there are 6 outer bastions. Those are the triangular shaped buildings on the outside of the main base. These help to provide an additional layer of defense as well as a layer of defendability if the base comes under siege. You'll also notice that there are 6 inner bastions attached to the main base itself. These bastions serve a very similar purpose to the outer bastions in that it provides a great vantage point over your enemies. Once I begin showing you around the base, you'll see how important these bastions are because not only do they provide you with a great vantage point, but you can also use them to store your loot. Now, I did mention that a bastion is triangular, and that is very true. However, you'll notice that the bastion actually looks more like a spade, for example on a deck of cards, than an actual triangle. There's a very important reason for this. I see it all too often in Rust when people build a base, but they can't actually see the front or the side of their base from any of their windows. A bastion, on the other hand, provides you with a 90-degree view of your base. This allows you to see anyone sitting at your windows, your walls, or even your front door, and also gives you the option of shooting at them from within the safety of your base. Now, depending on how many windows you choose to add to your bastion, it can also provide you with a lot more visibility, which of course makes it even easier to defend your base. You'll see that with this base design, it gives you and your teammates 360 degrees of visibility. And of course, no base is ever complete without an accidental smiley face smiling up to the moderators above. Now that we've covered bastions and the outer layout of the base, let's actually dive in and take a look at the design from the inside.
Oh yeah, friends, time to dive into the base. In order to actually get into the main base, we have to start by going into the bastion here. What you'll notice is that there are plenty of windows in this room. There's also a lot of room to move around, which makes this both a maneuverable room as well as a room that's good to defend your base from. You'll see that it provides great vision pretty far into the distance of your base. As mentioned in the bird's eye view, you'll also see here that it gives you great 90-degree angle of your base in case someone got right up next to it. The barricades also helped to keep people away from the base so that it gives you even another layer of protection. You'll see that you can pretty much see all the surroundings around your base. Additional windows provide even more security, and if you had another teammate with you, would allow them to shoot from a different window than you. You'll see right now that you're able to stack windows. This allows me to put the wood shutters outside of the sheet metal windows. Since there's also metal barricades right outside the windows, this prevents enemies from coming up and opening the wood shutters. You also may notice that the stone wall here appears to be facing backwards, but it's designed this way on purpose because if someone was going to attack this bastion, they're going to attack it from the front. And so we want the stronger side of the wall facing outwards. As we move into the courtyard, you'll see that there are 2 ladders on the bastion, which allow you to climb up to the top and use it as another point of vision. You'll see that it gives you even more vision than when you were down below inside the bastion, but also gives you the option to jump down from the top or even look directly down. Since we're now safely in our base's courtyard, this is a great location to place items that require being outside, such as furnaces or oil refineries. You'll also notice a very similar design to the bastions that are actually attached to the base. There's plenty of windows that provide vision. As you move throughout the courtyard, you'll notice that there's a little 1x1 outpost, and this contains your tool cupboards. These tool cupboards provide a 360-degree range around your base. And quite honestly, even if an enemy gets access to one tool cupboard, they're still not going to be able to build close enough to the base to make an impact. And even if they had access to all the tool cupboards, all they're going to be able to do is build up to the top of the base. They still have hundreds of doors to get through before they might even find any loot. If you run around the base, you'll see that it's very similar in design, both on the outside and on the inside. Making the base symmetrical actually makes it easier to maneuver since you know the design regardless of which side you're on. Now we're going to take a look inside the base. You'll notice that there's no airlock inside this layer, and that's by design. This first layer of the base is designed to be extremely maneuverable. All the doors on the right will either lead you back into the courtyard or into a bastion, giving you vision into the courtyard. This layer is also symmetrical, which allows you ease of maneuverability and access to all the different vision points of the base. Opening a door on your right on the non-slanted portion of the base will bring you back into the courtyard. If you head into a bastion, you'll see that it's a very similar design from the outer bastion, but it's slightly different. You've still got your windows, which gives you vision out into the courtyard, which you'll notice also gives you vision of your front door as well as your oil refineries and your furnaces. But the bastion is also designed with a center area. Now, the center area does provide an extra layer of strength and security to the base because it's more stone that the enemy has to blast into, but on higher levels of the base, it also gives you a location where you can store crates, furnaces, sleeping bags, or other gear. From this layer, there's obviously many doors leading into the courtyard as well as the bastions. However, there's only 2 doors leading you deeper into the base. Since the base is symmetrical, these 2 doors are located on opposite sides of the base. If we take one of these doors deeper into the base, you'll finally see that we've entered the coveted airlock. Airlocks have obvious benefits. If an enemy gets access to your outer layer, you're still able to enter the airlock from some of the main access points of your base, such as the stairs or from the center of your base. If for some reason you die while you're in the airlock, they still have 3 closed doors to choose from. This can be pretty confusing or frustrating for attackers, especially if they have limited explosives. In my base design, if you take the left door, it's going to lead you into an empty room. You can use this room for crates, furnaces, sleeping bags, or whatever you want, but I choose to use it for nothing. If you take the door into the center of the base, this is going to lead you into what looks like a little gazebo area. If you run around to the other side, you'll notice that there's another door, and this leads you into the other side's airlock. This design is exactly the same as on the other side. If you take the left door, you're going to end up in another empty room, just like you did when you took the other left door. Making the base symmetrical like this makes it more maneuverable since you know exactly which doors on each side you're going to need to take. Using more doors like this may make it cost more for you and seem like it's a lot of doors, but it makes it a lot more confusing for attackers, which also makes the base more secure. Heading into the center of the base, you'll see it looks like something out of a horror movie where you need to guess the right door. And I designed it this way on purpose just in case an enemy did happen to make it to the center of the base. 2 crates can be kept behind each one of these doors. You can also keep furnaces and sleeping bags back there as well. You just need to make sure you place the doors before you actually place the crates, because once the crates are down, you can't place doors anymore. Also keep in mind that keeping your loot in the center of the base is not always the best idea, because that's where most attackers always assume the loot is kept. Almost always they will blast directly into the center of your base. To recap quickly, the left door brings you into an empty room. The center door brings you into a common area or a gazebo-like room. But what about the right door? Let's find out. You'll see at the end of the hallway is a door, and inside that door is access to the second story. If we go up to the second story, you'll see that we've now entered another airlock, which again is almost identical to the ones below it, except the door to the left is now access to the floor below instead of access to an empty room. If we take the right door, it's going to bring us back into the outer layer that gives us full access to all the bastions. This is identical to the floor below minus the doors that lead us out into the courtyard. On this story, and the higher up you go, the more vision you're going to have from these bastion windows, because you're going to be able to see farther into the distance. Here you obviously can't see much because the outer walls are intact and protecting the base. If we head back to the airlock and then to the center of the base, again you'll see how similar the design is to the floor below it. Hopefully the design is starting to become familiar to you. The base design stays pretty symmetrical up until we get to the 4th floor, where there's a few notable differences, so I'm going to take us upstairs here and I'm going to show you why the 4th and the 5th floor are designed a little bit differently from the 3 floors below it. You'll notice that despite the doors, how quick and easy it was to get from the 2nd floor to the 4th floor. You'll remember before when I mentioned the 3 aspects I consider when designing my base, and that's why these floors are designed differently. The first thing you'll notice is that the walls here are wide open. This gives me a lot of visibility into the distance, which makes the base more defendable this way. This is also the outer layer of the base, which I try and keep as open as possible. That means I can run all the way around this layer without anything getting in my way, making this a very maneuverable aspect of the base. You might also be wondering why I didn't just put up windows instead, and there's a good reason for that as well. In bases as large as this, it's very important to be able to get downstairs as quickly as possible, and having an open wall here simply allows you to jump down into the courtyard, even further adding to the maneuverability aspect. One thing I haven't shown you yet that I'd like to show you is located in the center of the base. There's 2 doors on either side, symmetrical of course, which each have a window in it giving you access to the ladders coming up. It's basically just another layer of security if somebody does happen to get into your base. And like I was mentioning before, this design is exactly the same on the 5th story as it is on the 4th story. Obviously, being on the 5th story gives you better vision into the distance and a better vantage point. Something cool about the 5th story though is that if you go into a bastion on the 5th story and look through the windows, you can actually see down onto the 4th story's outer layer, which means that if an enemy happens to get onto the outer layer of the 4th story, you can actually see them from the windows and pick them off. Now I will admit that the chances of an enemy getting onto your floor without blowing up your entire base first is pretty slim, but it's a cool feature. Once we get past the 5th story, usually I start putting up some sort of sniper tower on top of the star fort. This means that the design of the 6th story and higher are going to be different than the stories below it. In many cases, you could pretty much stop building the base at the 5th story and feel happy. However, since my base is located in a canyon, I wanted to build a little bit higher with more protection. Just like the rest of the base, I still want to make sure that it's maneuverable as well as defendable. You'll see that you're actually able to go outside on the 6th floor.
Just like on the 4th and the 5th floors, this gives you the option to jump down into the courtyard if necessary. It also gives you the option to literally look directly down the walls of the base. You'll see that having floors like these provide great vision, as well as a height advantage over your enemies. It's also quick and easy to get from one side of the base to the other. Like I said before, adding the sniper's tower to the base isn't 100% necessary, but it does make it a lot easier to defend your base from. The sniper tower that I added onto my star fort on this base may certainly be different from one that you choose to add if you tried to build the base. Something you may have noticed is that there's another story above the one that we're currently standing on. The sniper tower that I added to this star fort makes the base 9 stories tall. Your next question is probably how to access those other floors, and like usual, I try to make it as maneuverable as possible. If you go into the center of the base on the 6th floor, across from the main entry door is another door. This room gives you access from the 6th floor all the way up to the 8th floor. One thing that these floors all have in common is that they provide great visibility and they're very maneuverable. There's a great amount of protection up here, and you can also keep crates and loot up here if necessary as well. Since the circumference of the floor gets smaller and smaller the higher up in the sniper nest that you go, it allows you the opportunity to see around the entire base in an even shorter period of time. You can literally see everything outside the base in a matter of seconds. Now, if you're like me, you don't want to spend all of your time running around outside of the base, so I do try and incorporate as many viewing aspects from the inside of the base as possible too. For example, you'll see windows on every corner of this floor. In addition to windows, I also put doors on every side. I feel that having doors on every side of a sniper's nest gives you more flexibility. If you only have one door, then the enemy obviously knows which door you're going to be coming out of, and if you get in trouble, they know which door you're going to be going back into. Just like the 7th floor, the 8th floor also employs the same aspects. You can see everything outside the base, as well as pretty far off into the distance. Again, you'll also notice that there's another floor above us that we can get to. This is accessible by ladders that are outside of the door. Being this high up doesn't provide you with much protection, but it does give you an excellent view of the surrounding mountains. Something important to mention about the sniper's nest that I've designed here is that you can literally move from the 9th story to the 6th story in a matter of seconds. You can then drop from the 6th story to the courtyard in a matter of seconds. And there you have it, friends. You've pretty much seen the entire star fort in all of its glory. The outer bastions and walls, combined with the layered approach of the star fort itself, makes this base a very secure and strong design. Inner and outer bastions with properly placed windows, as well as having open floors with only half walls instead of walls, provide 360-degree visibility around the base, making this base easy to defend. Implementing an outer access layer with access to all of the bastions, as well as a sniper nest with the ability to jump from one floor to the other in a matter of seconds, also makes this base very easy to maneuver. This may all sound good on paper, but how does it actually stand up to the test? Earlier in this video, before the tour began, you may have noticed that there were rockets flying at the star fort. Well, the star fort did come under siege. And in my next video, I plan to show you how the star fort stood up against over 400 rockets. So please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, or ask any questions that you guys may have. Most importantly, don't forget to brush your teeth and drink all sugary beverages from a straw. Thanks for watching, friends, and I really do hope you enjoyed the video.